Hey writers, it's Mr. Marshall here at Stony Lane. I'm coming to you today because I heard that you and your friends in your class are studying something called realistic fiction. Realistic fiction is the kind of story that we can write that didn't really happen, but it could have. Okay? That means that there's no magic powers, there's no monsters. It's a kind of story that's just about ordinary people like you or me or maybe someone that's your friend. And the things that happen in realistic fiction, there's a problem, and the problem usually gets solved inside of the realistic fiction story. And it's not solved through magic, it's just solved through people solving problems the way they really do. Okay? And so, two teachers that I know, Mrs. Greco and Mrs. Zotollo, who teach in this school, were working on that with their class. And they wrote a story together. You want to see the story? Here it is. Their story is about a kid named David. Okay? And he reminds me of David from No David, if you know those books. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So here we go. It says it was a very hot summer day. David was at the beach with his family. Now let's see what happens. David's brother and sister were building a sandcastle. David was feeding and chasing the seagulls. See, like that can really happen, right? It didn't really happen because David and his family don't really exist. But that's the kind of thing people really do, right? All of a sudden, a big foot smushed the castle. Psh! No, David! Shouted his brother and sister. David's sister and brother stomped their feet and shook their fists in the air over their heads. Look at that. You could tell they're really upset. Well, you would be upset too if somebody smashed your big sandcastle, right? I bet you would. David feels bad and says sorry. He wrapped his arms around them and gave them a big squeeze. They said, "That's okay. It was just an accident." And they decided to build a mega castle together. And an hour later, their mega castle was done. It was so cool. They all felt super happy together. And that's the end. So this story had a lot of good things in it, right? The story had the setting, which is where and when it happened, and we know that. It had characters doing stuff. It had a problem. It had feelings. We laughed, we cried. It was great, right? But one thing's missing. You know what's missing in this story? The things that the characters were thinking in their heads. That's what's missing. That's what's missing. So, what Mrs. Greco and Mrs. Zotollo did was they went with their students to go back into the story to see if there was a place where they could add like a page that had a speech bubble, a thinking bubble, right? The things that a character might have been thinking just quietly in their head. Okay, so let's see. So we're going to go to this page. Let's look at page 2 again. David's brother and sister were building a sandcastle. David was feeding and chasing the seagulls. So, what could David have been thinking? So, they came up with this. They made a thought bubble that said, do seagulls eat crackers? That's something David could have been thinking when he was feeding the seagulls, because you got to know what to feed them, right? And so, they added this thought to the story. Because when we add thinking to our story, it makes the story more interesting. Okay? Because then we not only see what the characters are doing, we know what they're thinking. So let's read the story now with that thought bubble inside it. It was a very hot summer day. David was at the beach with his family. David's brother and sister were building a sandcastle. David was feeding and chasing the seagulls. Do seagulls eat crackers? Do you see what we did there? We added their thinking. into the story. We added David's thinking, and then it goes on with all the other stuff that happens with the foot and the castle and the mega castle and everything. So that's something that you can do if you want to make your writing better. You can add the things that a character was thinking quietly inside their head. You can do that and make your reader really, really understand the story so much better. Okay? And one way you can do that is making a picture that has a thought bubble in it and then seeing what the character might be thinking. Okay? Why don't you try that? And I'll see you next time.